Welcome to Al Jazeera. The gunman behind the worst campus shooting in the United States history has been revealed. He was Cho Seung-hui, a South Korean who was himself studying English at Virginia Tech University. It's thought Hui shot dead 32 people there before turning the gun on himself. Fareed Barsoom has this report.
The news everybody has been waiting for and dreading.
We have been able to confirm the identity of the gunman at Norris Hall. That person is Cho Seung-hui. He was a 23-year-old South Korean here in the U.S. as a resident alien. Cho was enrolled as an undergraduate student in his senior year as an English major at Virginia Tech.
The identity of the gunman who went on a rampage, killing 32 people on Virginia Tech's campus before taking his own life. This announcement will do little to help the students at Virginia Tech or throughout this community.
Really, I think we're just still in shock. I don't know that the enormity of it all sunk in yet. Yesterday was a long day.
All morning, signs that people here are desperate for some way to deal with the tragedy. And many questions remain unanswered about how a gunman was able to roam free for 2 hours between shooting sprees. Officials received an emergency call about a multiple shooting at the Ambler-Johnson dormitory. That's where police found one male and one female, dead. The shooter was already gone. 2 hours later, more gunfire across campus in Norris Hall. Dozens were killed before, according to police, the gunman, Cho Seung-hui, took his own life. Students and faculty members themselves carried out some of the wounded. Police are even looking into the possibility that there was an accomplice.
The evidence has not led us to where we can say with all certainty that the same shooter was involved at both instances. So we are now exploring that evidence and trying to make that trail. It's certainly reasonable for us to assume that Cho was the shooter in both places, but we don't have the evidence to take us there at this particular point in time.
The names of the 32 who have lost their lives here won't be made public until they've all been identified and family members have been informed. For the students and faculty, as well as for their families and the whole community here, it will be some time before they begin to cope with this tragedy. To ever make sense of it might be impossible. Fareed Barsoom, Al Jazeera.
Well, in the past hour, the South Korean Foreign Ministry gave its response to the killings.
Yeah, we here in Korea also very much shocked at the horrific incident. And we Korean people and the Korean government would like to express our heartfelt condolences and to the victims and to their bereaved families and the American people.
South Korean Foreign Ministry spokesman there. Moving on, and 4 young children are among the victims of 2 separate deadly blasts in Afghanistan. It's thought the boys were playing near an old artillery shell when it exploded outside their school in Herat. More than 500 kilometers away, 4 UN workers and their driver were killed by a roadside bomb in the southern city of Kandahar. James Bay sent this report now from the Afghan capital, Kabul.
There was both shock and anger as parents gathered outside the school where the bomb went off. It happened during morning break time when the children were in the yard playing. 4 primary school children, all young boys aged 8 or 9, were killed. The Taliban deny they were responsible for a blast that also injured 5 youngsters. No one had expected an attack on children. No one expected a bomb here. Herat is normally seen as one of the more peaceful places in this troubled country. At around the same time, at the other end of Afghanistan, another bomb exploded. It was detonated the moment this UN vehicle passed. Its occupants, 4 Nepali nationals hired by the UN as security guards, and their Afghan driver died at the scene, close to the center of Kandahar. It was, I'm told, a bulletproof vehicle, but there was no way it could stand the force of this extremely large blast. One of the doors was found 50 meters away. At the scene, things were tense, and police tried to confiscate the cameras of some local news organizations. This time, on a known Taliban website, there was a claim of responsibility. They say they did it in response to a report yesterday which claimed the Taliban were deliberately targeting civilians. That report, though, was produced by Human Rights Watch, a group completely independent of the UN.
It is completely senseless, this. Whether it's a report by us or not, there simply is no justification for these kind of murdering of civilians who are only here to try and help this country.
Today, the UN were targeted. The bomb in Herat in the west follows one in Kunduz in the north yesterday, both considered until now relatively safe areas. And all this follows the bloodiest week for NATO in terms of casualties. James Bays, Al Jazeera, Kabul.
Tensions are flaring between Sudan and Chad after the Chadian government showed Sudan a videotape of what they claim are government-backed rebels operating on their territory. Al Jazeera has gained exclusive access to the tape, which came just days after Sudan was forced to apologise for killing 17 Chadian troops during a border raid. Nahid Samdoost has the details.
The Chadian government says these men were arrested near the Chad-Sudan border and are rebels destabilizing the country. The tape was obtained exclusively by Al Jazeera and, according to Chad's government, shows 17 fighters, among them 3 Sudanese. Here, the identification cards proving their affiliation to the Sudanese army, says Chad. But the men say they are unarmed herdsmen arrested at the border. This video was handed over by Chad's government to a reporter in the eastern town of Abeche, only days after its foreign minister apologized to Sudan for killing 17 of its troops in a cross-border raid. Chad has repeatedly accused Sudan of backing rebels in its territory and of supporting attacks by Janjaweed fighters.
If the mercenaries attack us again, we will follow them wherever they go. And I hope the Sudanese brothers allow us to follow them inside Sudan, because they are the ones creating problems for us. They attack us in Chad and flee into Sudan.
The conflict in Darfur has killed an estimated 300,000 people and left 2.3 million people homeless, in what the United Nations has called the world's worst humanitarian crisis. After months of resistance, the Sudanese government on Monday accepted a 3,000-man strong United Nations peacekeeping force that is to support the struggling African Union troops in the country.
This is a very positive sign, and I and the African Union intend to move quickly to prepare for the deployment of heavy support package and hybrid forces.
Although regarded as a substantial concession by Khartoum, the US has already responded, saying Sudan is not doing enough to secure peace. In a visit to the Chadian capital, US Deputy Secretary of State John Negroponte urged Sudan to allow a 20,000-strong UN peacekeeping force. The stability of the region and the lives of thousands are at stake. Nahid Samdoost, Al Jazeera.
And staying in the area after months of delays, Sudan says UN peacekeepers can be deployed to the troubled Darfur region. 3,000 troops will work with an African Union force, but the UN officials say it could take 6 months to get them there. The agreement suggests progress, but the US remains sceptical. It argues that Khartoum has backtracked on previous agreements. 3 people have been hurt during clashes between a group of journalists and security forces near the Palestinian parliament in Gaza City. Reporters were trying to enter the parliament to question politicians about Alan Johnston, the BBC reporter kidnapped last month in Gaza. Efforts to secure Mr. Johnston's release are ongoing, but concern has been growing among his family and colleagues as the silence over his whereabouts and welfare continues. In the Palestinian territories, April the 17th is Prisoners' Day. 1 out of 5 Palestinians has been imprisoned by Israel at some point during the 40 years of occupation. At the moment, there are 10,000 in Israeli jails. This report now from our Gaza correspondent, Noor Uday.
Every Monday, families of the 10,000 Palestinians imprisoned by Israel stage sit-ins at the Red Cross offices in their cities to demand freedom for their loved ones. For Palestinians, this day is personal. Over the past 40 years of Israeli occupation, 1 in 5 Palestinians have been imprisoned by Israel at some point. Among those still held by Israel are almost 400 children and 120 women, as well as 41 elected parliamentarians. Another 900 are called administrative detainees, imprisoned without charges or a trial